We're going to get some good advice, bad advice, and some worse advice. I'm going to start with you, Jackson. Give me some good advice on dealing with third-party integrations.
Yeah, so I guess we all know that access management is a top level security best practice these days. So just consider third party app connecting to your core systems like or even more than you do for user access.
Okay. Dan, now give me some bad advice.
Since most third-party integrations use standard authentication protocols, you should trust all of them.
Oh, all right. Give me worse advice in trusting all third-party standard protocols, Jackson.
Wow, worst. So I guess just trusting that business owners will disconnect unnecessary OAuth apps and that developers will revoke unused API keys.
Pretty good.
Get ready. It's Super Cyber Friday.
Hey, welcome everybody. It is Super Cyber Friday, and today's topic is hacking third-party integrations, an hour of critical thinking about securing apps that talk to other apps. Our guests today, you just met them. They are Dan Walsh, he's the CISO over at Village MD, and also Alon Jackson, who's a co-founder and CEO of Asterisk Security. And just so you know, Alon goes by his last name, just Jackson, so that's why I'll be referring to him as Jackson. When I went to elementary school in the Boston area, nobody called anybody by their first name, so everyone called me Spack. Hey, Alon, or I'm sorry, Jackson's company, Asterisk Security, is the sponsor for today's episode. So thank you, Asterisk Security, for sponsoring today's episode about third-party integrations. All right, 7 different ways to participate. You know them. Chat room, many of you have discovered this already. How to not manage third-party apps. That's your bad idea. I already see Dustin Sachs had one locked and loaded, ready to go. Submit, how do we make this 10% better? So just what's your one little tip to improve integrating third-party apps? And we'll have polls up. You can join us on video at any time, or we'll try to get you on by just typing "bring me on" to ask a question or make a comment. But you can also ask a question. If you see that text at the bottom of the screen, ask a question. It's actually a link, and you can type in a question right there. So please do that. And as the questions come in, vote for your favorite question. All right. Our schedule, we'll have good advice, bad advice, worse advice. How not to manage third-party apps. Make sure you label it bad idea : and for your tips, 10% better. Let's try to get more good advice than we normally do because we are always overloaded with bad advice, and I appreciate that. We'll play the public interest. We'll have our poll live on how to not to manage third-party apps. We'll play the Department of Yes, and then we'll vote for how to make it 10% better. And God willing, we've had problems the last couple of weeks with bringing people on to debate their worst ideas, but we'll have the top 2 worst contenders face off. Last question, final advice, and then we will do our meetup. Stick around for our meetup. Please stick around. Even if you are new to the cybersecurity industry and you think, oh my God, all these people know more than me. I don't feel comfortable talking with them. You're the exact person we want to join us, so please join us. By the way, next Friday is Hacking Current Events. It's a quite unusual topic as well. The link to register for that, do I have the second tab open? Who's talking to me here? Hacking Current Events is going to be next Friday. The link to do that is at the bottom of the screen. Do I have a second tab open? Are you talking to me, Andrew, in the back channel? Or is somebody else open? I do not have a second tab open. Why? Are you getting an echo from me? Let me see something. I'm not getting an echo. Whatever. I can't tell what's going on right now. But anyways, the link to register for next Fridays is right there at the bottom of the screen. And if you register by 5 p.m. next Tuesday, you're automatically entered in a raffle to win the CISO Series jacket. The winner actually has been contacted but has not responded. It's the person who's I can't remember the name, but the BISO at Bank of America. So please respond. You will win your jacket. All right. Okay. The question was actually to you, Jackson. Do you have a second tab open for Crowdcast? If so, there might be some echo. Oh, no, it is all fixed.
Fix it.
Great. All right, let's jump into this. I'm sorry there was a little bit of confusion, audience. We're now back in business. All right. Let's just talk. I'm going to start with you, Jackson. How are, just in the very simplest sense, how are applications being brought into our environment?
Yeah, so they're being brought in so many different ways these days. Could be by business owners, just connecting, the latest and greatest on top of their Salesforce. It could be developers generating API keys tokens to automate their work. And could be the increasing amount of citizen developers that create these crazy workflows, automations. We mainly know them these days as marketing guys, but not only.
Now, and let me throw this to you, Dan. I'm assuming you see applications coming in all the time, and I just saw this stat about no code and low code apps. This was Gartner claimed by 2025, 70% of applications being brought in are going to be these low code, no code apps, and many of them may be just Salesforce apps because that kind of falls into that category as well.
Yep.
Are you seeing a great increase of these types of applications coming in?
We are, and I think that the challenge with them is two things. One, some of these applications are such a de minimis cost to the business that there's not a thought to have security govern them. Like as an example, this particular low code or no code application is going to cost me $150 a year for my fill in the blank team to do whatever. How bad can it be? Because it's only $150 a year or whatever.
How can it be just because of the cost, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think what people don't realize is, what kind of data is going to get put into there. When you have low code or no code, I would argue you actually have less visibility into the risks that you have because you don't know what's actually running things in the back end. And so that's an additional level of risk that low code solutions like that carry.
All right. I'm going to bring this back to you, Alon. Is this problem sort of just cranking up in that people are now becoming aware to it that they just weren't aware to it? So this is it's just getting on everyone's radar at this point. Yes?
Yeah, I think we'll understand that these tools and apps that we connect on top of our accounts are useful, right? This is the way we do business today. We need these apps to really run and be more and more productive. And as IT is democratizing, we need the way to manage it. And you can't really stop the business from running forward. So as usual, that's our job.
So let's then get to what is the best way to communicate to the lines of business about, hey, I saw this awesome app. It's only $150 a year. Why not use it? I mean, it's going to solve so many of our problems and you want the business. So what would be the proper procedure? I mean, it's just let's take a look at it. And if that's it, what the heck are you looking at? I'll start with you, Dan.
So there's a couple ways that I've seen organizations address this, and it really comes down to how reactive or how proactive do you want to be. And so I think first of all, I think it's important to understand the level of data that these applications are going to have access to. If it's simply emails, well then that's a little bit different than if it's PII. Mm-hmm. Or that's much different than if it's, something even more innocuous than that. So I think that's the first question, to orient the business to that type of question. Like what is it? Is it proprietary data to the company? The other thing is, what kind of permissions is this app going to have? I unfortunately was a part of a security incident, I guess now 4 years ago, where a third-party app was compromised, and it caused a lot of heartburn for the program that I was managing at the time. So one way you can approach it, I've seen in the past, is especially in real small startups, is to just start asking people to submit some sort of ticket into the service desk just to log that they're going to do it, and then have a period of 3 or 4 days where that gets reviewed. But yeah, I mean, you do want to empower the business. Security doesn't want to say no. So I would encourage folks, when hopefully, number one, you've created an environment and a culture where people feel comfortable approaching the security team. And then secondly, once that's accomplished, you in turn can empower people to ask those types of questions that you're going to ask, and they can come to you with those answers already. Because I think third-party apps and these low-code, no-code are actually going to set us up for greater software supply chain problems. And that, when you mention that to folks, because of Log4j and SolarWinds and these other supply chain problems and other other areas of technology, they're very sensitive to that, and that really resonates with them.
So, Alon, what are you then? Okay, so Dan's team is communicated to everybody like, hey, we need to review this first. Before you're even bringing an app into the environment, what is it that one can do? And mention even like what Asterisk can do even before you bring something in. You're just looking at it. What can you do to see whether this is going to be cool or this is going to be a pain in the butt?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'll say first, Dan, you said about software supply chain. I think, we're taking it to the next level. We call it service supply chain, right? So cloud application supply chain with all these API integrations, not only the code or libraries that we have, right? It's this interdependency where everything is connected to everything. Yeah, so that's a good point. And yeah, I think, context is the king, right? So understanding who's connecting, what is connecting, how is it configured, with what permissions, is it being used at all? So looking at the actual activity and not just understanding is it being used or not, but is it behaving as we expected it to behave? Are there known issues with this third party? Just to name a few best practices, really.
All right. We don't have any questions. Please, audience, get some questions in, and we're going to be we're about 3.5 minutes away from doing our first game. All right. What is then the non-user activity? So these applications are speaking to each other. They're doing things that are not being initiated by users, although it's initiated by users because the application's now in the environment. What is happening or could happen that, like, essentially in the shadows or without us knowing while we're sleeping that we're not aware of, Dan?
Well, so in order for third-party integrations to work properly, they need a set of permissions to a set of things,
right?
And that could be anything. That could be your camera on your video on your computer. It could be Google Sheets, which could contain sensitive financial information, and so depending on what the third-party application integration is, that can be those permissions can be abused. And by the way, I think as consumers that do a lot of third-party integrations on the consumer front, right, with like our Google account, right, with Google Play and everything, and updating apps on our phone, whether it's iOS or Android, we're just used to clicking through all those permissions. When in reality, those permissions can and should be looked at and can and should be configured. And I think that bleeds over into work as well, because it's like, you see that, and I'm going to pick on Google. I apologize if anyone is here from Google, but OAuth is a huge way that these type of integrations are managed. And so I see that I connected my blah 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 account on my Android this morning, and now I'm just going to connect my Google account to this one. How bad could it be? And then once those permissions are set, they're almost permanent, because we really don't do an entitlement review. We really don't evaluate minimum necessary. They just kind of lurk out there, and because we're not scanning them, we're not getting logs from them, we just think it's fine and it's safe, and it's really not.
By the way, the Dutch noticed something that you had pointed out before we went live, that we are all sporting black. Although my shirt technically is green under this light, though it looks black. So he referenced the Johnny Cash look that we all have got going on right now. All right, I want to come back to what Dan was saying about this sort of like there are all these permissions and settings and things like this. Is this something that Asterisk is doing? And maybe this is a conversation for a little bit later, because I want to get to our next game in a minute. So I'm just going to tease the concept of open source software here for a second, but let's just talk about the issue of all those permissions and stuff. What is it that you're looking at, Jackson?
Yeah, so first of all, it's exactly what Dan just said, right? We call it consent fatigue. So just end users clicking consent. Yeah, I need to get my job done, right? I want to move forward. Got no idea what these permissions actually mean mostly.
And also,
I need to get the job done. Yeah.
But even if they read it, do you think they could know what it is? That's the thing. Like,
yeah, it's sometimes very technical. Yeah.
So
it's a mixed bag.
So what should they know? And is that something that either you're looking at or the team has to, like, is that fully security's responsibility at that point? Because often when that those consents are happening, that's happening when you're installing the app. And it's like, well, do I need a security person looking over my shoulder as I'm clicking the thing, or do they need to create a whole document? Like, when you sign on for this app, we looked at it. Make sure you click this, 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 and this, and this. Like, how does this communications process get handed off? And is this being done for every app? And is this becoming a tantamount task? What's going on, Jackson?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the issue. So automating this process and understanding that security can't know all the tools that are there, right? We don't know all the hundreds and thousands of them. So let's just focus on the riskiest ones, the ones that, are not popular, the ones that hold the highest permissions, the ones that are connected, but maybe the user who connected it left the organizations, the ones that, behave differently lately, stuff like that. So that's exactly the kind of context that we provide and highlight. So security managers are really now able to have a more informed conversation with the business owners, saying, hey, listen, this third party has, admin access to this database or to the CRM, but it hasn't been used in the last, 3 months, right? So let's just ditch it. Or, this API key is, jumping up from a strange IP range in the last couple of days, right? Is this, supposed to be like that or not? These are very, interesting kind of access control capabilities that currently we have mostly for users, right? We have a lot of user access mechanisms, especially, thinking of single sign-on, 2FA, and stuff like that. And when you think of third-party apps, the problem is they don't have mobile devices, right? You can't really control their user access in these kind of mechanisms. So that's exactly what we bring forward.
All right.
Do you know what others are thinking? On the public interest.
All right, this is an audience favorite, or I'm saying it's an audience favorite. Hopefully they do. They'll play along. So audience, you can play along with this game. You know how it works. It's pretty simple. I'm making Jackson and Dan play along. We're going to see only 4 questions. They're A-B essentially. And it's about what people actually search for. Let's look at the first question. All right, Jackson and Dan, most average monthly search queries, is it more applications or programs? What do you think they search for more?
Applications.
I would go for A.
Applications, and you are?
And we said it together, so.
Both correct. Yes, both correct on that. Both applications. Very good. Okay. 1-1 for both of you so far. Next one. Most
Started
average
from an
monthly
easy one.
low code or no code?
Ooh, I want to go with C.
Low code for you, and Jackson?
I'll go with Dan again. It's working.
Okay, both say low code, and the correct answer is no. A whopping
Really?
12-fold difference. No code is what is far more popular. All right, so it's still 1-1. All right.
10 times.
Vulnerability, and by the way, just so you know, the reason all the letters are different here, we're not going to A-B, is because people, they vote. And by the way, a lot of them got D, so a lot of them got the no code on that, I see. But they vote, and they're a few seconds behind us. So what happened was when we were first starting, was a lot of A-Bs, and we never knew which one they were answering. So we did it this way. All right, vulnerability or weakness?
Vulnerability.
Vulnerability?
This time I'll go different than Dan.
You're going weakness? All right, and it is vulnerability. All right, 2-1. Dan is up. Last one, almost twofold difference. In-house or third party?
Third party.
Third party.
Third party. And you were both correct. Yes, very good. All right. Dan wins 3-2. Now the question is to our audience, did anyone get 4 out of 4? Because it ain't easy to get 4 out of 4. Do we have any 4 out of 4s there? Wondering if anyone did it. All right. Good job, both of you, for that on that. All right. We got a ton of questions that just came in, so I want to address these questions. Please vote these up because we got 6 questions in. I'm going to go for the first one with Russ Harlan. Haven't even read it. Here's a question. What can suppliers and vendors start doing today to make API security less of a procedural nightmare for a typical customer, which is essentially what I was referencing. I'm going to go with you, Dan, on this. It just seems like, let me just back up a second. The whole point of SaaS solutions is, hey, give me your credit card, click now, you're working in minutes, right? Yeah. That's what makes it so friggin' attractive. They worked it so hard on their user experience, and then you're coming in saying, no, don't do that. Let's add 20 more layers to it. So how do we not make it so severe the other way, I guess, is my question.
Well, I don't think we're saying no. I think what we're saying is yes, but like let's check for some things, right? And so I think the best way that companies can do that is to have a standard that you publish. And I hate to go down the GRC route, but I do think it makes sense to say, like, here's the ecosystem of API standards that we have, and here's how you can check for them. And if it falls within this like walled garden of standards that we have, like, knock your socks off and go ahead and make these connections.
Our app, like, is that information readily available by what percentage of the apps? Like, that does sound great. Like, how often do you see that?
I think if you have, look, is someone in the marketing department going to know how to look for that? Probably not. Is it for the most part publicly available for someone who knows what they're looking for? Yeah. So
okay.
in my opinion, I think if you were to have, like let's say in an ideal world for me, anyways, the way I'd like to see this run is, we pick on marketing because I agree with Jackson. They seem to be like the super users of these applications, at least when you look at them as compared to the rest of the departments in an organization. But ideally, it would be like I put in something into my, service management ticketing system, whether it's ServiceNow or Jira. I say, hey, I want this third-party app called Marketing Now. I don't know if that's a real thing. I just made it up. And can you help me with that? And then, that person schedules a help desk analyst schedules some time with that person, and they install it. And they have like a little SOP of things that they can check for, and then they go ahead and they install it. And this should not take more than like 5 minutes to check.
Really, that quick? So, Jackson,
for the most part, I would say, yeah, in my experience.
All right, I'm throwing this over to you, Jackson. Like, what more can be done? What, in terms of visibility from the developers that would make your life easier, make your average CISO life easier, and then on top of it, well, let me just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think the most hardest part is for third-party vendors to understand what really is their least privilege access that they need to get their offering done. Because what's mostly is happening is they're taking high privilege because the scopes are not granular enough, right? And sometimes even if they are granular enough, so they're not sure exactly what permissions do they need for this and that API calls, right? So they're just if it works, don't touch it, right? This is what they do.
That's
on
a
the
really
other
good
side,
point.
Yeah,
that's a super good point, because we've all seen that. Just like on your phone when you're asking, the application asks for these permissions. I saw one app. It was like a document sharing app, or it was like a document app similar to Google Documents, and they wanted access to my contacts and the ability to delete my contacts. And to which I almost had a heart attack when I saw that. And I said, "That's in there?" And people say yes to that, and yet, like you said, consent fatigue, I'm sure it happens all the time.
Yeah,
So
the consent fatigue is big. But the other side of that is these third parties, right? Their business model, a lot of the times it's on data. They need your data. Sometimes they're free. Sometimes the more riskiest ones are the ones that are free. They don't go through procurement. They don't go through any security vetting, right, process. So they're not really free, right? They're expensive in terms of permissions. That's where the catch is.
All right. Let me see. So this is a highly voted up question that came in from Matt Black. How do we improve the level of information that vendors are publishing about their connectors so we can better understand what data they may be getting at? So this was essentially what I was referencing earlier, Dan. And you were saying, oh, yeah, it's pretty much out there. And yes, I can look at it. Is there any way they could present it a lot better? What would you like to see? If you're like, oh, to make my life easier, if all vendors could start doing this would make the implementation of their software a breeze, because they want to do that. They work so hard to make their application easy to install, to purchase. I'm guessing they're going to want the same thing, easy to understand, that it is going to be secure in your environment. So what would you like to see?
I mean, I would just like to be able to go to their website and see this is how it works, right? And we have this set of APIs with these sets of attributes for each API, and this is what the things that they call, like, super high level. It's not anything real technical, but just understanding that, we're going to ask for this marketing API, we're going to ask for email, first name, last name, and state. And then this is, and that will be what the API calls for. And then this is the information that's going to be returned when we do that. Just something as simple as that. And then maybe in addition to that, like because that will by default give the permissions that it needs minimally. And then you can, and then maybe a list of what other permissions that they're asking for. Mm-hmm. Because if there's an application like that, then there's really, in my opinion, not a need, to, I guess riff off an example that you gave, David, would be like to have delete permission. Well, why do you need that? There's no reason for that.
It seems insane.
Yeah.
Like, may I ask you, Alon, looking at all these things, what's the most insane request an application has made? Delete seems pretty bad. Delete contacts.
Delete contacts is crazy. I had a flashlight who wanted to look at all my pictures on my phone, right? So
really
got no idea why the flashlight actually needed that, but
but yeah, it's like, I mean, I can just envision it like, well, just ask for it. Like, what's it going to hurt? Just ask for it, right? It's got to go down to that level. Just tagging on what I was asking Dan right there is, what can developers do to make everyone's life easier? Their whole goal is to get this implemented as safely and as quickly and have people buy. So what would be the additional thing they should do? Jackson.
I think, like Dan said before, so explaining why do you actually need these permissions, or maybe on the other side, right? Why is this the least privilege that you can ask for, right? So for every permission, explain, okay, I need this to provide you this value, right? I need this for you to get this functionality. This really sets, the mind of the customers that you're doing the best in terms of security, to keep their privacy, right? To know that they're not giving the keys really to their core systems to not only third parties that they trust, but also just trusting them, in a right level, right? And not just trusting them blindly. So I think that's the best advice I could give third-party vendors or developers.
Just like a one-to-one relation. We ask for this, so we can do this and this. We ask for this, so we can do. And actually, sometimes, by the way, clear, right? to the normal person who's not a security professional, that will actually make some sense to them as well. Let me just make a couple of quick reminders, and then I'm going to get to our next question here. If you have not clicked the link at the bottom of the screen, Hacking Current Events, it's going to be a super fun topic as well, just like this one. Click on that, register for next week's. By the way, it will not take you out of this Super Cyber Friday event, so please do that. Also, stick around for our meetup. Also, in about what time we got here now? 2 minutes, exactly 2 minutes. We're going to start playing our next game, so please vote for your favorite bad idea. I believe half of them are from Dustin Sachs. I think he has consumed most of them. Soon, SCF dart tournament at my house this summer. Yes, you're all welcome, by the way. Come. By the way, who is going to Black Hat? Speak up if you're going to Black Hat. I want to know. Because, by the way, the 8th, I'm playing pinball. Who wants to play pinball with me on Black Hat on the 8th? All right, let's get to the next question. It says CISO Series Producer, but I understand from my back channel that that this comes from Dutch Schwartz of AWS. What is the most valuable thing you can do to leverage SBOMs? I forget what SBOMs stand for. Software business.
Software bill of material.
Bill of materials. That's it. Essentially, it's telling you what's in the software effectively for your business. So what's the most way SBOMs effectively for your business? Example, not like SOC 2 where most people do it because they have to. I'll start with you, Jackson, on this. Give me a quick answer for this if you can.
Yeah, I think a very quick answer is understanding that, as we said before, right? It's not only software, it's also services, and monitoring the behavior of these APIs. So it doesn't really matter what's going on in the back. It really matters what's actually happening. So monitoring the activity and understanding how these third parties are actually behaving in comparison to your environments. That's a quick answer.
All right, I want people to vote right now. You literally have a minute left to vote. I'm giving you 60 seconds. The problem is we may have Dustin going up against Dustin in bad ideas. So please vote. You don't know who's who, but I told you half of these here came in from Dustin. I think Dustin had a whole mess of these locked and loaded before the show. He was like, I'm going to win this no matter what. He was convinced it was going to happen. I'm giving you just 30 more seconds to do just that. All right. I'm going to add the same S-bomb question to you, and then we're going to go to our next game. What's your take on this about what they can leverage S-bombs effectively for their business?
So I think, in my opinion, understanding the open source components that the third party technology is made of, you can scan that for vulnerabilities and understand how it's constructed and what types of vulnerabilities could impact what normal behavior would look like. I think that's important. I do think that that's different to what Jackson talked about in terms of how sound software could still be abused in terms of that service aspect that he talked about. But I think fundamentally you want to understand, have visibility into the components so you can understand if there's a log4j as an example, right? We saw this with log4j big time. Are you impacted? Is that something you need to worry about with this particular third-party integration or not?
All right, we are ready for our next game. Call just came in. Hold on. Whoops.
Hello, welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
All right, we have a lot of horrible ideas that have come in, and they're pretty awful. And this one is hands down the winner here. And I challenge you to come up with a reason in the Department of Yes of why you actually want to deploy this incredibly stupid idea. I'm going to start with you, Dan, on this one.
Okay.
And this one you're not going to like,
Okay.
but you have to accept it.
All right, fair enough.
Give all employees local admin so that they can install the integrations themselves. So pretty much all employees have local admin access. Why do you want to do this? Oh God, he's
the reason why I want to do this is because I want to empower the organization with full productivity, and I don't want any sort of controls to block the organization's ability to be productive.
I'll give you that one. Jackson, why do you want to do this?
Why do you want to do this? I think if you're in a good situation, it's hard to show progress, right? But if you start from the bottom and say, okay, so everybody has admin and start slowly but surely deleting them, you can show progress. So it's a good place to start with.
Hold on, wait. So you start with admin access and you start reducing their access? Is that what you're saying?
You start with admin for everyone, and then you can really show progress very easily, right?
Shouldn't it be the other way around? Like they give them. It's like it's like giving a kid full reign to do anything. You start taking things away. I don't know, Jackson. I'm not buying that one. All right, that one, by the way, came from Dustin. And who did this? I don't know who did this next one that I'm about to say, but I'm going to start with you. All right, so this one is the second most votes, and this might be Dustin as well, so he may be arguing with himself. Just buy the companies you want to work with so they aren't third parties, unless you're Amazon, who seems to be buying everyone anyway. So just buy the third parties. Oh, this is John Procap. John Procap is this one. All right, so just buy the companies you want to work with so they're not third parties. Why do you want to do this? Jackson, starting with you.
Why do you want to do this? Mm-hmm. I think the best way is considering all third parties as first parties. So maybe your organization could also be considered a third party, and then there's no really third parties, right?
Well, that was the point. But why do you want to do this? So there don't exist third parties. You're all a first party. So why do you want to do this? You're going to buy all these companies that may or may not have security issues.
Maybe because you have to waste all your budget left for this year.
Yeah, of course. You want to it's use it or lose it. We know how that works. Just buy some third-party companies. Dan, there's a better answer to this. I know this.
Because it's about command and control. Now you can get in there and see every single strength and opportunity for the security program and make it right.
And I will give you that. Yes! But I will also give you, during the acquisition process, you go through the whole security nonsense. So you're going to deal with that way before you integrate.
You've maybe if you're lucky.
There you go. If you're lucky. All right. Good job, both of you, for that. So we want to get, if we can get in about 10 minutes, get both John Procap and Dustin Sachs on camera to defend their horrible ideas, which they both stink. Although Justin's is pretty horrible. I'm going to just say that the give admin access is kind of like the nuclear bomb of crappy security. Now, I had another question I wanted to ask, and hold on, where was this question? Who does this come from? This comes from Andrew. Andrew who? I don't know which Andrew, but every SaaS app has completely different configurations and security controls available to consumers. Within the Fortune 500, there are 1,000 plus third-party SaaS apps and vendors. How would you approach standardizing security and enforcing minimum security requirements that must be met to deploy? So I'm going to start with you, Dan, on this one. Can you say, like, hey, you see all these third-party apps, before you even bring it to me, just make sure you do these 3 checks. So that could be kind of like sort of like a very first level of security, like it's the equivalent of lock the door, if you will. What can you do?
One, I think you could. So one, what I would say is help us understand every organization is going to have data classification that they classify their data by. So tell me what the data classification is that this third party will be pointed at or have access to. 2, I would say help me understand the authentication of how we're going to connect these two. Is it something like an OAuth or is it something else? And then 3, I would say, what period of time are you going to need this for? And if it's going to be forever, I want them to tell me that. But I also want them to think to themselves, well, maybe I don't need this forever. Maybe I just need this for 6 months or for a year or whatever. Because then it puts into their mind this concept of like, hey, maybe we should wind this down at some point as the business evolves and changes.
What would you go? All very, very good. What would you be your like minimum telling the non-security people, like, just make sure before you bring it to us, make sure these bare minimum requirements are there? What would you say, Jackson?
I'd say 2 things. So understand who this third party is, right? Did you actually want this one, or does it look a bit fishy? So kind of first double check the origin, then understand really the permissions you're giving it. And maybe the third one is remember to revoke it. Maybe that's a long shot.
Okay. All right. All right. So just let's get the next poll up, the 10% tips. I don't even know if we got some good 10% tips in. Oh, yes, the poll is up. Let's see. How many did we get in? We got 5 in. So as a point, we got, 25 bad ideas, and we got 5 good ideas. Again, there's always a horrific ratio of bad to good, of which I give the audience plenty of crap on, of which they deserve. So we want to... also, let's bring on John and Dustin. Aaron, our producer in the background, who's been making sure this whole show runs smoothly. We want John and Dustin on so we can play our next game of determining which one's worse. We kind of all know, but we're all fighting for John to come up with a good argument, which, by the way, I put in a good argument there for John, which hopefully he will use that and some more as well. Let's go to the next question. We got plenty more coming in. Invites have been sent. If they come on, we'll stop. All right. This comes from Val Dobrushkin. We're going to get to that in a second. They both came on that quickly. That's awesome. There is John. There is Dustin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Dustin, can we hear you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Works. I'm gonna let Dustin go first here because John has the harder challenge here, I think. But I think you can do it. Dustin, why is your idea worse? And again, Jackson and Dan are going to be the judges to determine who has the worst idea here.
So I would start by stating that nothing bad has ever happened when somebody's had local admin that has no security knowledge ever. We've never heard of that problem before.
You're supposed to be arguing why yours is bad.
Yeah, you're supposed to argue why it's bad. He's being facetious. I know. We picked that all up in seconds.
It's a horrible idea because giving people local admin access is just a recipe for disaster, and giving them access to install software that hasn't been properly vetted is an even worse idea because that's how most out there into our environment. So we're talking about not doing a proper risk assessment, not properly checking whether or not these tools have malware or other things in them, and we're giving people who have probably not paid attention to the security training, and when I say probably not, have definitely not paid attention to the annual security training, full access to all things on there.
All right. Your audio, unfortunately, was dropping out a lot there. So we got most of it right there, but good argument. I'm going to just throw this out. While Dustin's idea is bad, it is not a guarantee of failure. It is conceivable that it could succeed. So just pointing that out. John, you go ahead.
Well, his isn't even that bad of an idea because a lot of companies do this today. They give people local admin, and many of them are still in business, so obviously you can survive it. But if you try to buy every single one of your vendors, good luck. I was being facetious when I suggested this, and obviously it's a terrible idea because, one, you can't do this unless you have one vendor or a bunch of very small vendors, and some companies may get away with that. But if when you say you're buying IBM, they don't mean the entire company. It's like a product from that portfolio. But if you were to incorporate that
mine is worse than John's, though, because if you buy all your third-party vendors and then give them local admin access, you're increasing your attack surface.
You can't have both.
It's not, you can't
have both.
Because
we're not stacking bad
mine makes
ideas.
yours so much worse because my idea is so much worse than yours. Because if you could have both, you could take all of your bad idea suggestions, which were 73% of the poll today, and then you could just destroy every company on earth. So I would definitely think that, but you can only have one bad idea. So I think mine's the worst because you can't possibly buy all your vendors. And even if you could, now you have to secure that much more of a footprint. There's no more dependencies on these other teams. There's no more. And yes, some people would say, well, I'd like to do it myself, but you don't get any more staff. You now have to secure 10x the footprint with the same amount of people. So it's just a horrible, horrible idea. The financial aspect.
I think John has a very good argument at the very beginning when he said there's many companies that already do this.
Yeah.
And they're still around.
I mean,
it's not.
If you've been in the business long enough, you've had to fight this in one or more companies you've worked in. And
all right, I'm throwing this to Jackson and Dan. You're the final arbiters. True, which idea is truly worse? I'll start with you, Jackson.
I'm sorry, Dustin. I'll have to go with John.
And why do you think it's worse?
I think it's worse because we're seeing hundreds and thousands of third parties with customers today. So buying all of them is kind of crazy. Unless you're AWS, right? Or Amazon.
All right. Okay. Guys, by the way, mute yourself because we're getting echo through you. Dan, which one's worse? Agree or disagree with Jackson?
I agree with Jackson. Your average mid-sized company uses over 300 third-party integrations. Was a statistic I read about a month ago. So
you couldn't physically do it.
No, you couldn't do it.
John, way to go.
Sorry, Dustin.
Dustin's is more damaging in reality because you could actually do it, and people do it.
There you go.
So
Good
he should
point.
get partial credit for that.
By the way, I want to point out that Dustin is one of these great CISO series success stories. He got hired because of coming to this very show through World Fuel Services, through Sean Bowen. So kudos to you. Love hearing success stories like that. If you have a success story too, please let me know. All right. We have just about 16 minutes left in our show. So let me just go mention something in our 10% poll. So these 10% tips are all things that we have mentioned in the show, which is involve security in all vendor selections before the deal is signed. I don't know who said that, but also Dustin said integrate app only after conducting a risk assessment. All good tips here as well. Please, if you did that one about, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. That first one I suggested, please let us know as well. Let me go back to our questions here. Oh, the one Val. I want to ask Val's question before we went into that. Val DeBrushkin. Oh, by the way, if you haven't clicked on the link at the bottom, register for next week, go ahead and do that. Val DeBrushkin asks, how do you manage the business need to keep adding supporting new APIs and integrations while ensuring there is sufficient security oversight and management? e.g., don't slow down the business. Okay, I just want to stress this new APIs because Dan, you were talking about like, oh, let me see these APIs. Do we work with them? But there's always going to be something new you haven't seen that is the latest, greatest, and you're like, well, I guess we got to start paying attention to this. So, how do you deal with the constantly got to add to your portfolio?
I mean, I think that's just part of being relevant and
Right.
staying up to date as a security professional. So if you're not, you yourself or somebody that you assign is specifically focused on this type of technology as it emerges, you're not really supporting your business. So I think it's as simple as that.
Okay. And Jackson, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think it's just so many of them out there that it's really important to prioritize and focus on the ones that matter the most, the ones that have a higher privilege, the ones that look maybe a bit fishy. This will really make you a professional when you're talking with the business guy, so you know what you're saying, right? You're actually talking about interesting third parties.
What are we not seeing in third-party integrations that you would like to see, Jackson?
I think transparency about why do they actually need their permissions.
So going back to your earlier comment, yeah.
Yeah, and also transparency about the actual activity. So how are they using the delegated access that they get to our accounts, right? That's very important. And also maybe some kind of an hourglass, right? So I want to delegate these permissions for a subset of time or something like that.
But not make it persistent.
Yeah, this could be, a great, very low-hanging fruit that will really increase the security tremendously. So, of course, we provide it in Asterisk, but it's something that I think every company should kind of have in basic capabilities these days.
All right, what would you add, Dan, in terms of, I mean, obviously transparency, but is there something specific you're like, we're not seeing this, we'd like to see it? I mean, I kind of asked this before, but maybe something they've never shown you before.
So what I would like to see is, generally once you connect that and you consent to the permissions, I would love to see those permissions expire after a period of time that the customer could set, and then re-acknowledge those permissions. Because I think that if it comes back up, there's a sense of, oh, well, why is this happening again? So almost like in terms of like an entitlement review of access, it should be like an entitlement review of permissions.
What about it? What happens when there is an application that is critical for your business? And I'm sure this situations like this, it's critical, but man, it's risky, and it's asking for permissions to the way to operate, and it's creating a lot of risks that you don't like. I mean, are you just creating compensating controls? What are you doing for situations like that? And if you run into it, like, we got to figure out a way to work with this app because it's going to be critical for the business. Dan?
Yeah, I mean that's happened before. I think the biggest thing is to understand that you are not the risk decision maker. Right. That's your business, and the bigger the risk, the higher that you should escalate that to, even all the way up to the CEO. And you should be prepared to give them the risk reward conversation, which is this app is critical to our business for these sets of reasons. However, this is the set of risks that we are incurring. And if something could go wrong, here's some of the things that could result as of that. Is that worth it to you? And just be there to have that conversation.
By the way, is that one of the reasons people come to you, Jackson? Like they're like, we have these applications, we got to use them, but we got to deal with the risk on it. Is that? Yeah. I mean, is that a compelling reason why they come?
One of the reasons, and completely agree with Dan. So context is the king, right? Bringing all the context to the table for the decision makers to accept the risk. So understanding how is it being connected? Is it configured properly? What set of permissions? Is it using this set of permissions? And stuff like that. Sometimes it's very hard to collect, especially when we have hundreds of such third parties. And changes their behavior. The permissions are changing very quickly. So kind of getting on top of that and understanding what should I focus on, and bringing all the context on the ones I want to focus on for the decision makers is exactly the kind of things that we bring in a click of a button.
All right. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wrap up today's show, and then we're gonna have final comments and advice, and then we're gonna jump into our our meetup portion. If you have not clicked the bottom of the screen, do it now because it's going to change in about 60 seconds. All right, our discussion for next week is hacking current events, an hour of critical thinking on how what's happening in the world can affect your security program. We've seen this happen again and again. I should also mention, I'm not listing here, but very connected to today's topic is that we're going to have 2 weeks from now, which is hacking open source, because many of the open source issues in third-party apps is very much affecting the way you're doing business. So if you're interested in this topic, you're going to be interested in our topic in 2 weeks as well. As I mentioned earlier, if you register by next Tuesday, you're automatically entered in a raffle to win a CISO Series jacket. So please register now. Click on it now, because that sucker is going to change in seconds. Hey, huge thanks to Jackson's company, Asterisk Security. They are asterisk.security is their web address. They got the .security domain. Didn't realize that you could do that, but now you can. They did it. Starting in 90 minutes from now, or 100 minutes from now, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 p.m. Pacific, Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review with Renee Gutman. She's a former CISO at Coca-Cola, Time Warner, and Campbell Soup. And that'll be over on the CISO series LinkedIn. It's a 20-minute show that's just the hottest stories in cybersecurity news for that week. Hey, stick around for the meetup. Oh, well, go ahead. Aaron, change the link at the bottom of the screen. There it is. It's changed. You can click on it now. That's our meetup portion. We expect everyone to be there. We expect Dustin to be there to explain how he was able to come up with so many bad ideas for today's show. Do join us for that. And tell your friends to join us. We do it every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And you want to sponsor Super Cyber Friday? Just email me. I think our next one available is going to be the end of August. All right. With that said, we have we got actually plenty of time. We might be able to get into a question here. Let's get into a question. We got a couple of questions. So we asked that question from Andrew. How about this? This comes from Jeff Reich, and tell me if this integrates with it. I'm going to start with you, Jackson, on this. S-bombs are great, but what about all the changes whizzing by from the cloud security providers every day? How does that affect your business?
I think the cloud security vendors.
Yeah. Because they're changing their security protocols as well. How does that affect the third-party app integration? Because the third parties are going to be on the cloud service providers. If they're changing things, is that a great concern? Not a great concern? How does that fall into?
If I understand the question correctly, so understanding that security vendors are also third parties connecting to systems?
I'm sorry, the cloud service security. I'm sorry, did I say cloud security provider? That might have been my fault.
I think so.
I'm going. He said cloud security providers every day. Oh, yes, he did cloud security providers every day. So I guess yes, it's the changes from cloud security providers. So they're providing, cloud security as a service. Those guys. Is that affecting what you're doing?
So really, cloud security vendors are also third parties, right? I think with security vendors, it's sometimes a very interesting concept because they have they need.
Jeff meant cloud service providers. So let's
clarify. AWS Azure and the GCP.
So he was. I thought he was talking AWS, and then he said cloud security, but he did mean okay. So let's go back to it. We're talking AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. How is that affected? Because they do change. Like their configurations change all the time. How is that affecting you? Because that is affecting the third-party providers because they're on those platforms as well. So how does that play into it all?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the interconnected environment that we have. Because when you think of the cloud infrastructure providers, right? So they're actually built of a lot of different services. So you have BigQuery, you have S3 buckets, you have storage, you have compute services, and they all interact with each other, sometimes even with external ones, right? So these kind of IaaS apps sometimes actually use database as a services like Snowflake. And this is actually just part of this interconnectivity of different third parties. So as we said before, it's not just a matter of S-bomb in the sense of software bomb, right? It's a matter of a service bomb or cloud service bomb. So understanding what kind of services are actually in use in the environment and how are they interconnected. Can data leave my AWS, Azure, or GCP accounts to other services as part of the actual working of this application? It's it's really everything, right? It's app-to-app connectivity, so everything is connected to everything. It doesn't really matter for a developer if it's SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, DaaS, right?
When these services get updated, Dan, what are the procedures that you go through? Like, because this is the thing I heard from another CISO is like, I implemented cloud secure or cloud service product number X, and a year later, how much have all my settings drifted away?
Yeah. So I think so in that example, Dave, I think he's probably talking about the VPC that he's running internally as a first party consideration. I think when it comes to third party considerations, the best way to ascertain that, and it's not a great one, would be through third party attestation of control. So like a SOC 2 type 2 as an example, there's monitoring requirements in there that access provisioning requirements that companies would need to provide attestation to. Am I going to be able to monitor a third party to make sure that they are properly managing access and identity in their cloud service provider? No, definitely not. Right. They're not going to give us that level of visibility. We might have in the contract with them a right to audit, if potentially. Are we going to get into that granular level of detail? So no, that's definitely a gap. And as we think about not only software supply chain, but the associated infrastructure that runs on, that is definitely a gap that we have that we'll need to solve. And I think just as we're seeing like the rise of SBOM on the source control side of things, on the source code side of things, we might see the rise of other types of machine readable formats that give attestation or assertion that these controls are operating correctly, not only annually with the SOC 2, but continuously through like API ingestion and monitoring of those controls.
All right, let's wrap this up. Okay, exactly 3 minutes. So I'm going to give you a minute right here. Alon, any last words on this topic, what you want to leave people with, and how to get in contact with you, and anything about Asterisk Security? Go for it. And here, I'll just put your guys' web address in here. Go.
Yeah. If I have a short time, I'll just say I want to thank the amazing team at Asterisk, our amazing customers for trusting us, and that will be at Black Hat. So if anybody's interested about learning more about third-party access and service supply chain, please reach out.
Speak up if you're going to Black Hat. Dan, are you going to be at Black Hat?
I am not going to be at Black Hat. I will be at Reinforce next week in Boston if anyone's there. And they want to say hello, but I won't be a Black.
Say hello to my mom. She won't be there, but she'll be in Boston.
Okay.
Anyways, any last words from you, by the way, Dan? I'm assuming you're hiring, yes, at Village MD?
Yes, I am. We have one. We're going to have two, actually, senior GRC analyst positions open and probably some IAM folks openings as well. Treat it like asset management. I feel like I'm a broken record when I say that about a lot of things, but treat these integrations as asset management. So catalog it, understand who the business owner is, understand what they have access to, and then make sure that you're keeping up to date and active with that as much as you can. Very,
very good tip. All right, I want to thank Alon Jackson, who just goes by Jackson, who is the CEO over at Asterisk Security, and you can also find Alon. He's also or Jackson. I'm sorry. Over at on LinkedIn as well. But he's going to be joining us in our meetup portion. The link at the bottom of the screen. If you haven't clicked on it, make sure you click on it now. And then also, Dan, you'll be joining us right after this, yes?
I cannot. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
All right, no worries. Yeah, but still, you can contact Dan on LinkedIn. Yep, he's very available if you want to be working with him as well. Thank you, everybody. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you to the producer, Aaron, working in the background, making sure this whole show's smooth. Join us next week and join us in the party right now. Click right there. Aaron, take us out of here.